Welcome to Life by Design. I'm your host, Robyne, and I am thrilled to welcome you to this space for real conversations about how we live, how we show up day in and day out, because the quality of our life is shaped by our habits. What we do in ordinary time allows us to be extraordinary. We can unpack what it takes to truly live well and be well in real life. Welcome to Life by Design. And I'm just so excited that you're here. I'm excited to introduce you to Courtney Townley. Now, this is a woman who was very involved in the fitness, wellness industry, and I hold so much respect for her because she acknowledged what we were teaching people, what we're talking about, it isn't working, and introduced this whole other evolution around health and well-being. And she's here today for a conversation to talk about what are two ways that we can just start. When we have a lot of unlearning to do, where do we even begin? And I hope this conversation with Courtney points you in the right direction. Today, we're in for a treat. I'm excited to welcome Courtney to the podcast because this is somebody I have been wanting to have a conversation with for a very long time, and our schedules finally made it happen.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm glad it finally worked.
Yeah, it always does, right?
It always
Sometimes it
does.
just takes a
Finds
little
a
bit
way.
longer, but it always does. Okay, so I have to share with you your new book, The Consistency Code. You are kind of unlocking a piece of information or lots of pieces of information all about different forms of like regulation and healing. And your work, it just couldn't be coming at a better time, I think, with the state of how people are feeling. So
Yeah.
could you give our listeners just like a wee little overview of like who you are, what this book is about, and kind of introduce us to some of the big ideas we get to talk about today?
Sure.
Yeah.
So obviously my name is Courtney Townley, and this day and age I call myself a health and self-leadership coach.
Cool.
And I
Okay.
think it was a long way to get to that title because
Yes.
I entered the waters through the fitness world.
Yes.
I was a professional dancer and I moved into fitness, and that was well and good. I love teaching movement. But what I realized really quickly is people were coming, I thought, to learn how to become better movers, but they were really coming to feel better. And I very quickly realized that I was ill-equipped with all the tools that would help them
Yeah.
to feel better because movement
Yeah.
isn't enough, right? There's
Yes.
so much more to the equation that goes into what helps a human feel better. So
Mhm.
I went on to get some nutrition information, and I went on to study behavior change science, and ultimately got to this place where I really had this reckoning with myself that transformation isn't about once in a lifetime experiences.
Mhm.
It is life experiences. So
Yeah.
life is transformation. And so often in the wellness industry, we're sold these cookie cutter protocols
Yes.
to follow.
Yes.
And we are missing the self leadership skills that actually
Mhm.
help us to navigate transformation, be that in the wellness industry or with our health or with your finances or
Mhm.
relationships or anything else. So I was really frustrated with how health was being represented in general because
Yeah.
it was a body size, it was,
Yes.
it was only data, it was a lot of, I don't know, just very isolated conversations.
Yeah.
And then I was also frustrated with the packaging of women's health, which was largely diet and exercise.
Yes.
And so through making my own mistakes as a professional, because believe me, I'm so open about having
Yeah.
to travel through a lot of territory that I didn't want to be
Yeah.
in terms of I was stuck in the fat loss world for a long
Mhm.
time. I definitely gave out cookie cutter protocols.
Mhm.
And all of that just led me to a place of realizing that this isn't it. This isn't it. This isn't what people need. And so my clients really informed the book. Like the book is
Love that.
such a representation of, I think, what I learned by walking alongside of so many women and realizing what it really takes to feel whole and to
Mm.
feel well.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Like there are so many questions and threads that I just like, "Oh, I wanna know more about this. Please tell me more about this." First and foremost, I just wanna hold space to recognize when anyone shows up and says, "I used to think this, but now
Yeah.
I think differently." I just want you to know that I have mad respect for you right out of the gates. Anyone who is willing to change their mind or have their mind changed and be open to new learning, it's literally one of my favorite qualities in a human. So just so you know, I want to recognize that I love your evolution. And I also love when a woman is having a reckoning, right? Like I think some of the greatest things happen when somebody finally says enough. I want to look at this differently. And I love that you are coming from that ecosystem, again, full of those hype cycles, these cookie cutter diet programs that we were just bombarded with as women. And I
Yeah.
always get really cheese, Courtney, when people say to me, like, oh, that diet worked, right? That diet worked. I lost 20 pounds once. Or, hey, I remember I used that diet and it worked. And I'm like, okay, but if you gain the weight back, did the diet really work? Or did we just happen to catch you in a time when you were in a particular season of how
Absolutely.
you were treating your body? When, and again, this notion that there's this one size fits all solution for everyone.
Yeah.
So first of all, right off the gates, I just want to acknowledge that you are coming from this as a learner, as somebody
Yeah.
who's walked this, and you have so many amazing ideas that you are bringing to us. And also the piece around that idea about our intuition, right? Our intuition about knowing our bodies, understanding this is more than just moving for the sake of getting those steps in. You're broadening our understanding of wellness and well-being. And for that, it's just amazing. And I want to learn so much more. Tell me more.
I love it. I love it.
So what would you say right now? So now we're at this place where we're realizing, okay, we've done it a certain way. It is not
Mhm.
working. We can tell because we don't even need to talk about the statistics about how unwell the world is, let
Yeah.
alone women in this world. This
Yeah.
messaging that we're not enough, that our capacity to be, a good parent, a good partner, a solid employee, a good leader, all tied up into this piece around all these hype cycles of what we should be doing, ought to be doing. And the one key idea that I would love for you to help us understand is this idea around our emotional well being, because we know it's linked to physical health. In terms of how our emotions are navigating the world right now, because everywhere we go, people just don't seem to be okay. And our emotional health seems to be taking a big bit of a bruising right now.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about, I mean, I don't know how you were raised as a child, but we didn't talk about emotions when I was a kid,
No,
right? We didn't
no.
we didn't talk about how to navigate them in a way that was helpful. We just were told not to feel certain things or not
Yes.
to behave certain ways.
Yeah,
But the way we behave is often a reflection of our capacity to be with emotion.
that's right.
And so I just feel like we massively missed the boat on that.
Yeah.
And growing up in a generation that just didn't talk about emotional well-being, there was a lot of unlearning that
Yes.
had to happen for myself and, of course, for every client I work with,
Mhm.
because we have been avoiding emotions our whole life.
Yes.
Or we do the opposite where our resiliency is so low
Yes.
because we're not taking care of ourselves that we become very reactive to every emotion. So we don't want either one. We don't want to numb out and we
Mhm.
also don't want to be reactive. So where's
Yeah.
the sweet spot in the center? And the sweet spot in the center, I think, is really all about, I mean, I think health in general is about stress management.
Mhm.
I think that our capacity to be with emotion is all about our capacity for resiliency.
Yeah.
And it really boils down to two major things when it comes to stress. Number one, we have to remove unnecessary stress from our life.
100%. Yeah.
And so when a woman hears that, she's often like, okay, well, it all feels necessary. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, let's
Yeah.
break this down.
Mhm.
Is the way that you talk to yourself, your self narrative, useful to you?
Mhm.
And so often, of course, the answer is no, like it's awful and it's
Yeah.
breaking me down and it's making me feel terrible. Okay, well, it's unnecessary because you have control over your self narrative.
Yeah.
Your lack of boundaries, is
Yes.
that useful to you? Well, no, because I feel like I'm a doormat.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's unnecessary stress because it's also something you have control over.
Mhm.
The food we put in our mouth, the way that we move or don't move our bodies, the way we
Mhm.
put ourselves to bed, all of that is within our control. And
Absolutely.
so it's taking radical responsibility for the
Mhm.
role that I am playing in my own suffering. That
Yeah.
is the first piece. The
Wow.
second piece to resiliency, in my opinion, is that we have to really, again, get honest with ourselves about where I need to be leaning into stress on purpose.
Mhm.
So, purposeful stress is the stress that fortifies us, that makes our life better. Going after that job you really want,
Mhm.
healing a relationship that's really important to you. Maybe that's the one you have with yourself. Having some hard conversations,
Mhm.
right? That type of strength training is a great
Right.
example of stress that fortifies us.
Yes.
So those two pieces, like to me, that's really what health is about.
Mhm.
And it's what allows us to have emotional capacity. Because when
Right.
I'm taking care of myself on those two fronts, I'm not reactive and
Mhm.
I'm not hiding.
Right. Wow, absolutely. I appreciate that on many, many levels. And again, when we think about that idea about that agency of control, and something we
Yeah.
talk a lot about in my work is that, again, when we look at things just at the surface, it feels, as you said, everything is necessary. Like my life, I'm stuck in it. I signed
Yep.
up for this for all intents and purposes. Like it's kind of like, this is the lot I am. This is how my life is. Here I am. And I really appreciate just putting that wee bit of nuance to recognizing there are things within our control, even when we are in quite rigid environments or rigid schedules or just particular seasons of our lives. It might feel very rigid, like there's no, everything's important. I can't give any of this up. But what I hear you saying is that like there are ways that we can look at certain forms of our behavior, our thoughts, our intentions, and there's actually a wee bit of agency there that we otherwise are just leaving on the table. And we're just in autopilot. We just keep showing up. And, when I was recently talking to a woman and she was saying about, that inner voice and like that narrative, we were having that conversation. And she said, it's so easy to be that inner critic, right? We all have that inner critic. And, how much effort it takes to become your inner coach and what that sounds like and how differently it sounds. And one of the things that we chatted about in that moment, Courtney, was just our beliefs are just practice thoughts.
Mhm.
Like a belief really is just a practice
Of
thought.
course.
And so
Yeah.
if we just acknowledge and set that intention that, what, where I can start in this whole revolution or this wee little rebellion about well being is to start with just how I talk to myself. Think about how many times and you've practiced or those reps you've got in about talking to yourself negatively, how quickly we can start to build momentum to become that inner coach, and we can again start to change how we speak to ourselves, therefore how we feel, therefore how we behave.
Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, I think there's so much belief that, like you said at the beginning, that this is just who I am. Like a lot of women will
Yes.
use that rationalization.
Yeah.
Like I've just arrived at this point in my life, and this is just who I am.
Yeah,
I love
sorry.
it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and you're right. The reality is our beliefs are just recycled thoughts that we
Yes.
have thought so many times that this is now what I believe. And what a grace-filled thing to acknowledge.
I like that.
Like,
Yes.
oh, okay. Well, that means that I can practice something new.
Yes.
And I also want to offer to someone listening because sometimes like flipping the script feels so hard because it
Yeah.
just feels so awkward and foreign. And so the thing that I like to remind people of is there's also the option to not have self narrative, to
Interesting. Yeah.
not think for a moment
Yeah.
and just do the thing that were compelled to do, whether that was like, sit down to start writing on your book or it's
Right.
going to the gym. I don't need to sit and have a long conversation with myself in order
Right.
to make those things happen. And I'll give you a great example of this. So I was commenting before we recorded about how much I love seeing your dogs. And I have a 200-pound blind Great Dane
Wow.
he wasn't always blind. So at 2 years old, he had to have his eyes removed. Long story, but regardless, I was convinced that this dog's life was over. I
Right.
mean, I was just devastated. And his ophthalmologist was like my counselor for 6 weeks as we were trying to
Yeah.
sort this out. And he sat me down at one point and he said, "Courtney, I need you to understand. You have so many stories in
Yeah.
your head right now about what this means for Sully.
Mhm.
And Sully doesn't have any of those stories."
Yeah.
Because Sully doesn't have a prefrontal cortex in the
That's
way
right.
that you do. His
Yeah.
is a lot smaller. So
Yeah.
he doesn't think about what's coming or he doesn't think about what life's going to be like without his eyes.
Yeah.
And he said, what's going to happen is he's going to come out of surgery and he is going to adapt.
Yeah.
And to me, that was just a moment where think profoundly understood that sometimes when we just don't think,
Yes.
we
Yeah.
just don't write a script, we don't write a
Yeah.
story, it's
Mhm.
easier to show up.
Yeah.
And when we sometimes identify, because often when you start to reveal your own thinking, you're going to see that a lot of it is not useful.
Yes.
Like, wow,
Yes.
I did not realize that that was the
Yeah.
quality of the tape playing in my head.
Yes.
It's so much easier to be with it and remold it when we come at it with an attitude of curiosity rather than
Mhm.
judgment. And one of
Yeah.
my favorite quotes of all time, I don't know who said it, but it's along the lines of you cannot be curious and judgmental at the same time.
Yeah. That's very Ted Lasso. That's very Ted
Yeah, and it
Lasso.
is just so
Yeah.
refreshing to say,
Yeah.
okay, well, in this moment, I'm recognizing that I'm being a total jerk to myself. Like the mean
Yeah.
girl is out in full force.
Yeah.
And the quick pivot to that for anyone listening, just to give you a tool,
Yeah.
is instead of continuing with that dialogue, isn't it interesting?
Mhm.
Isn't it interesting that I made this mistake today
Mhm.
and my mean girl showed up? Because it
Yeah.
is interesting.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And curiosity immediately squelches the judgment that we were just
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
And so again, it's just a simple tool, but it can majorly shift the way that you come at yourself, especially in the hard moments.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that, and from a again, from a psychological perspective, what we're doing is we're just putting that wee bit of spaciousness in between that antecedent and the response, right?
Yeah.
By using the word like, "Isn't it interesting?" What you're simply doing is just slowing down so you have opportunity to
Mhm.
reframe. You have opportunity to catch a breath. You have opportunity to perhaps see something differently. So I
Yeah.
really like that invitation of like, "Isn't it interesting?" And one of the ways that we use it in my work is we often we use the word like, "Oh, I notice." It's almost like
Yeah.
we're catching a feeling, right? It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I notice my self-talk right now is pretty mean," or, "Hey, I notice my self-talk sounds like a lot like a sibling who isn't in my corner," right?
Yeah.
Like you notice things. And
Right.
again, I think that notion of "Isn't it interesting?" or "I notice," you're absolutely right. It puts us in that place of curiosity, which again shifts us from that shame carrying or that guilt or again the judgment that's so easily for us to regress back to.
Yeah, and you're so spot on. It just ignites the pause, right? And the
Yeah.
pause is everything. Like the
Yes.
power literally is in the pause of I
Yeah.
am noticing right now that I'm not showing up in a way that I feel awesome about.
Yeah. So a question I'd love to get your thoughts on this. So just recently I was standing in the line with someone and we started to have a conversation and it was kind of getting on an airplane and we were in lineup and then we started to talk. The person started to talk about politics and I like started to engage and then I stopped and I'm like, nothing useful is this isn't going anywhere. This isn't useful. And I'm trying to like minimize these type of conversations. So I'm like, so, how about those Blue Jays? Right? Like literally just like
Right.
I can talk about something else. And then what was really interesting is the person was like, "Oh," and he's like, "Well, I was just going to mention this about politics." I'm like, "Yeah, I can't go there right now because I'm really actively trying to protect my peace
Yeah.
and like I just need to like." And again, I didn't use the word set a boundary, but it was so interesting because again, I was just like, "Yeah, let's talk about the Blue Jays." And again, like just let's do talk about anything other than this right now because this feels triggering. And what was I thought really fascinating afterwards is that like that was probably one of the first times out loud with like a stranger that I was just like, yeah, I don't want to talk about that. And again, what was amazing, the world didn't fall apart. Like the person didn't walk away scorned. Like it was just like, oh, and so often when we talk about boundaries and you identify that kind of that usefulness of these boundaries, I think there's this propensity to think, Courtney, that like people are going to get mad at us or
Sure.
that it's going to upset people or make situations worse. And it was just like it just made the situation so easy. Now I appreciate that's not the same type of a boundary as dealing with a difficult person in your life. Like this is literally like a bystander. But still, can you tell us more about that idea about our boundaries? Because I know that's a kind of a hot topic right now where folks are so curious about boundaries and we have this kind of fear of putting them in place, even though we know so often this is what's going to help protect our peace and again help us stay regulated.
Yeah. Well, first, let me say there's a phenomenal book that everyone should buy. It's called
Yeah.
oh my gosh, The Courage to Be Disliked. And I can't remember the
Yes.
author's name,
Yes.
but I feel like that book really helped me to look at boundaries so differently because to
Okay.
me, boundaries is showing up in a way that keeps me in integrity with
Mhm.
myself and also helps me to keep myself safe, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's exactly what you kind of conveyed to that gentleman. But here's the truth, that gentleman, he could have responded completely differently. He
Yes.
could have been really uncomfortable with that
Yeah.
response and kind of pushed back.
Yeah.
And I think so often as women, we don't set boundaries is for exactly that reason. We're so afraid of ruffling feathers. We're so
Yes.
afraid of rippling the water. We're so
Yes.
afraid of other people's discomfort.
Mhm.
But their discomfort is not your work.
Right.
That's their work. And I'm
Yes.
not saying that you aren't hopefully delivering your boundaries with consideration and
Mhm.
kindness. But what happens on the other side of being clear about your boundary is not your work in terms of how
Mhm.
the other person responds.
Right.
Because a boundary is literally you telling someone how to be in relationship with you.
Beautifully said. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And when that isn't respected or someone has a huge problem with that, I think that's a really great piece of data,
Amazing. Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like, I should probably just take note of that. I am
Yeah.
noticing right now that this
Yeah.
person is really uncomfortable with my boundaries. Isn't that
Mhm.
interesting?
Isn't that interesting? Amazing. How do you respond or support someone that maybe one of your clients or someone you're
Yeah.
coaching with or working with when they say, you know, I try to use my boundaries and now all of a sudden people think I'm being all self-righteous or I am not being, again, I'm being difficult or because again, I appreciate that there's that natural resistance for some people, especially if they've kind of walked past our boundaries and are walking all over us. What do you have a strategy or a way of when people are like, "Oh my gosh, aren't you high and mighty? Don't you think you're special?" Like, again, some of that gaslighting that I think sometimes happens when people are rubbing up against their boundaries. How do you coach people through that? What would be your
Well,
suggestion?
I would say, first of all, you as individuals, we don't need to co-sign on every thought we think. We
Right,
also don't need to buy into every thought someone has about how I'm living my life.
right.
Because at the end of the day, what matters is that you like your reasons.
Mhm.
So that would be the thing that I redirect my client to. Like if she's telling me that, she's eating a new way, which means she's kind of cooking a different way and it's her husband's a little upset about that. And, I'll just ask her, do you like your reasons for why you're making this shift? And have you tried to convey that in a really considerate way? And if
Yeah,
the answer is yes, your work is in
mhm,
literally letting it go
right. Wow.
because you can keep trying to force it. You can keep trying to argue your point, but honestly, it's probably just going to cause them to push back harder.
Right,
And
right.
so often, and this is, I hope this doesn't come across wrong. I've said this in my own communities, and it lands for a lot of people. But even with my own husband, there are a few things that he does not understand sometimes about why I need to do something. And I
Fair.
will
Yeah.
try to explain to him in all the ways that I can, in a loving way, that
Mhm,
this is just something I really feel like I need for my own nourishment.
mhm.
And sometimes the conversation gets to a point where I'll say, I don't need you to understand it. I need you to respect it
Got it. Yeah.
because I know myself well enough to know that this is something I need right now. And honestly, that usually is the end of it
Yes. Yeah.
because I don't need you to understand every decision I make about my life. I need you to respect that I know myself well
Mhm.
and I am making the best decisions that I can with the knowledge that I have.
Yeah. I can see how that could be super useful. And again,
Yeah.
especially not even just with a spouse, but also even kind of like with a teenager, right? Even with our kids, where I
Yeah.
really love that piece to really highlight that about like, do you like your reasons? Right.
Yeah.
Like if you like your reasons and you can sit with your reasons, because to me, that's a really beautiful way to tap into that idea about alignment and integrity.
Yeah.
Because if the reason isn't solid, then obviously it's going to feel gross in our bodies. But if the reason is like locked in and lined up with our values, then like that's good, right? Like that's enough for us to then realize like, okay, this might feel like a wee bit of discomfort, but that discomfort, that's okay. That it's not bad. Just because there's discomfort doesn't mean it's the wrong decision. It doesn't mean it's the wrong move. It is probably just because this is new territory. And again, I think there's that tendency that we try to avoid some of that feeling of feeling like a rookie or experiencing newness as a sense of something is wrong when really it's just these are new practices we haven't yet mastered yet. So I
And
appreciate that.
also going back to our point about removing unnecessary stress,
Mhm.
When we are doing new things, like you just said, or we're doing hard things, of course, discomfort is a part of that.
Yeah.
And we often create a lot more discomfort than is necessary
Mhm.
because of the way that we're thinking about discomfort. I'm not
Yep.
supposed to be feeling this. This
Right.
other person shouldn't be uncomfortable about my choices,
Right.
right? Like we have a lot of thoughts that generate more discomfort.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a two-part thing where we have to expand our capacity to feel discomfort, but we also need to take responsibility for how much we are contributing to our
Mhm.
own discomfort by the way that we're thinking.
Yeah, I love that, and we often talk about that in my work, this idea around self-stewardship, that we have this obligation with these big, beautiful lives that we have the opportunity to live, that, like, we can't just be at the kind of marinate in our misery of the discomfort or the season or the experience or the bad boss or whatever it is, that, like, part of our ability to be resilient is to tap into that agency and explore even, like, pathway thinking. What are some ways out of this experience? And
Yeah.
as soon as we shift from that, why is this happening to me, to the, what's my next right move? Where
Yeah.
could I go from here? Who can I talk to? What's a really good question that would help me unlock something about the situation? Or what might I be getting wrong? Or what are my blind spots? Like, again, it just creates this amazing momentum that puts us in the direction on that trajectory of where we're hoping to get to. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's solution focused, right? Rather than
Yes.
problem focused, which I think
Yes.
is everything. Like, are you in this moment focusing on the problem, or are you focusing on, like you said, that next decision that can help me to get out of this?
Yeah, I appreciate that for sure. I still remember years ago, I was at a race and some I was trying to figure out something and there was a problem and I was trying to find like that kind of help desk and the one gentleman said to me, he goes, "Oh, we don't have help desks here." I'm like, "Oh, okay." He said, "But we have a solution center." And I'm like, "That sounds great." And so I remember like walking over to the solution center and I'd be like, "Hi, are you the solution center?" And this woman was like, "Yeah." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Great." She's like, "What solution do you need?" And I'm like, "Well, this is the situation." And she's like, "Okay." And she's like, "I got a solution for that." And I just remember how
Oh,
this
I love that.
perspective shift was so powerful. And again, it's not discounting the problem or ignoring the emotions that are part of what it feels like when we're in discomfort or there's a problem or something that's uncertain. Again, it's that idea of looking for that solution center. And maybe that solution center in our lives could be that trusted colleague or that friend. Or, as you said, maybe it could be just quieting that inner critic long enough to just go do the thing and
Yeah.
not getting stuck in our own way sometimes.
It's so true. And also, I think part of that is changing our expectation that life is at some point going to be void of problems.
Yes,
It's never
totally.
going to be. Life is one long series of problem solving. And the
Yes.
sooner we accept that, the less we suffer.
Yeah. And what I say to my kids all the time is like, pick problems you like, right? There's gonna
Oh,
always be problems, so literally pick problems you like, right? Pick problems that you like because 'cause you'll again, we're as you said, we're natural born problem solvers, and we literally are going to be in this for the whole entire duration of our lifespan.
so
It's going to
true.
be a series of problems, so, like, let's start picking problems we like versus getting stuck in some of these problems we don't like.
Yeah, it's so true.
Awesome. So I'm mindful of our time and I feel like we could talk for days, but I do have just one piece that I would love you to share because in your book, you have some terrific tools around getting us to tap into like our semantic systems and getting us into that place of regulation. So is there perhaps one or two key tools that you would like to kind of draw our attention to and introduce some of the work about the semantic work that you're doing because it's really, really useful. And I could just see this being really valuable to a lot of people today.
Yeah, I think the one piece, because I think semantic work is so different for everybody. Like
Okay.
everybody responds to it differently. Everybody can handle a different dose.
Yes.
So I would say like around semantics, it's really about, I think, easing your way into it, like being willing to experiment with some things. For some people, doing some light movement of just
Mhm.
being on the floor and exploring where their body wants to go
Yeah.
might feel amazing, but for someone else, it might feel terrible.
Yeah.
For someone else, going outside today and just putting their feet in the grass. I don't know if everyone has grass right now. I don't because it's snow.
We have
But
snow. We have snow.
getting outside and just getting into the natural world, like hearing
Mhm.
the birds chirping in nature is so soothing to our nervous system.
Yeah,
Someone once told me, and I think this is so brilliant, birds don't actually chirp when there's danger near.
that's right.
And so, right, there is that piece
Yeah,
of our system that just kind of knows that
yeah.
inherently.
Mhm.
And so, getting outside, getting out in front of, like, getting away from the blue lighting, right,
Yes.
and doing something that it maybe helps to forge connection with an actual human, whether
Yes.
or maybe just another being like your dog. Petting your
Yeah.
dog
Mhm.
could be a way of soothing your nervous system. So I think there's a lot of different and I think too we live in a soundbite culture. So if you
Yes.
scroll on social media, you're going to see 10,000 different exercises you could do.
Yes.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think where it gets a little tricky is we don't stick with one thing consistently enough to decide if
Yeah.
it actually works.
Mhm.
So just be willing to try something on and
Yeah.
notice how your system responds. And are you wanting to run away from it because you really feel unsafe or just because it's new? Like there's I think that inquisitiveness, that
Yeah.
self-inquiry work that we have to be doing even in those exercises.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that would be my recommendation for anyone listening is just being willing
Mhm.
to try some simple things on, whether that's breath work or it's
Mhm.
journaling or it's
Yeah.
movement, um, and and practice it enough times in small enough doses because the dosage really matters. Like if you
Mhm.
expect yourself to move in a certain way for 30 minutes and you've never done that type of movement before, it might be too much.
Yeah.
So what about just 5 minutes,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? We underestimate, I think, how a little bit can go such a long way.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And when we're talking about semantic pieces, the way I try to explain it to folks is this idea about like all for all intents and purposes, we're getting out of our head and we're getting into our bodies,
Totally.
right? Like we're literally more. And it was Sir Ken Robinson who said, we're more than just like our bodies work is more than just carrying our brains around and the fact that like our bodies have their own agendas, which I loved how he shared about this. And he had this amazing TED talk on around, how schools kill creativity. But anyway, for people who want to learn more about that notion of just we are more than just bodies used to transport brains around to different places and spaces. And again, it's this idea like what does it take for you to kind of have that shift out of that kind of beta brainwave state, think, do, hustle, perform, achieve, and just kind of tap into another way of feeling, another way of being. And as you said, it could be getting outside, it could be listening to birdsong, which we know actually has healing properties, which is pretty remarkable in the research there. As you said, journaling, a little bit of movement, even just like changing levels. So if you've been like sitting all day, just standing and putting your body up in higher spaces, or again, if you've been standing all day, just kind of even sitting on the floor, grounding, reconnecting, these small practices, they're not that little after all. They don't take a lot of investing into time, other and energy. However, the return is beautiful. Like the return feels like you are actually doing something that feels better versus just something else on your to-do list.
Yeah, or something that someone else told you worked for them, and so therefore it
Right.
should work for you,
Yeah.
right? I think we get kinda stuck in that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is that willingness to experiment for
Yeah.
sure.
So, Courtney, are there any like hype cycles right now that you've come across recently that literally like get you pretty cheesed? Like, if you could take this moment to be like, Robin, I want to correct this one big misapprehension that seems to be really popular right now, especially when we talk about body work. Is there any in particular that you would just like, I would love people to stop thinking that this works?
Well, I think in lieu of what you were just talking about in terms of getting out of your head and into your body, and that we're just not these meat sacks that carry a
Yeah.
brain around, like that's
Yeah.
not the point of our bodies. Our bodies have their own intelligence.
Yes.
And we have done such an awesome job at overriding that intelligence. And
Absolutely.
so I always say that I think largely, if you look at a lot of modern day wellness information, it is encouraging you to almost act like a dictator to your body
Right.
rather than being in relationship with your body. There is a big difference. Dictators tell people what to do, right? And we
Yeah.
tell our bodies what to do. I'm going to exercise this amount. I'm going to
Yes.
eat in this way. And
Yes.
this is how you should respond to that.
Yeah.
And when our bodies don't respond to that, we get pissed, right?
Mhm.
And then we do
Yeah.
something even more extreme.
Yes.
And obviously, again, I taught that for a long time, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive to people being in that space. I
Yeah.
know what it's like to be in that space.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you can consider what makes for really healthy relationships?
Mhm.
It's communication, it's
Yes.
connection,
Yes.
it's trust, it's
Mhm.
spending time, it's listening.
Yeah.
When was the last time you described your relationship with your body in those ways?
Yeah.
And so I would say
Mhm.
maybe that would be the thing I would push back on the most because and I
Yeah.
don't think it's necessarily something new, but I look, I looking online, again, all these sound bites, it's like, take this supplement,
Yes.
eat in this way, the
Yeah.
diet dogma, the exercise dogma. And it's like, well, hang on a second. What's your body asking of you? Because
Yes.
self care does not always look the same because our
Mhm.
stress loads are not always the same.
Yeah.
So what might self-care look like on a day where you didn't sleep well,
Mhm.
your kid is acting up, you've got a
Mhm.
huge project going on at work, your resource availability is very low.
Yes.
So if you do not honor and respect that and plan accordingly, you're just going to stress your system out further.
100%. Absolutely. I could share with you just I love what you're saying, and I could share with you just super briefly one of my little practices as somebody who's, like, recovering from that type of trying to hate yourself healthy
Yeah.
mentality and lifestyle is when I get on a treadmill, because I still love to get, like, my movement
Yeah.
in that way, and I always get on and just, like, let my body know. It's just like, "Hey, I'm gonna take you for a little spin. We're gonna get on this device." I do recognize this was invented as a form of torture in France in the 1800s. However, we're doing it for intention because I want to make sure that you are well resourced with all of the good dopamine, the
Yeah.
serotonin. Like, I wanna just fill you up with endorphins, and I literally have a conversation with my body every single time I get on
Yeah.
the treadmill, and then I always make sure to say thank you. When I
I
put the
love
weights
that.
back on the shelf, I have a little moment where I say, like, "Thank you," and again, it's trying to reconnect that, at any time, if it hurts, I'll stop. Before, if it hurt, I would just turn the music up louder and go
Yeah.
harder, right?
Push
So
through it.
again,
Right.
it's pushed through, right? So again, it's
Yep.
recreating that dialogue. And I love how you said that in the terms of as relationship. And I'm sure I look a wee bit wompy having conversations kind of with treadmills and different types of gym equipment, but it has completely changed that I have to go to the gym versus I get to because
Yeah.
the reward is there and it's not around again hating yourself healthy. And
Yeah.
there is like recovery available to us, right? Even
Yeah.
though that this is a system we might have been really kind of overwhelmed with for decades, you can change that relationship. And the thing that I absolutely love about the human condition is our body responds so quickly,
So
like,
well.
so quickly, and again, even asking yourself, like, "Is today a cardio day or maybe today is just a slow stretch day?" And,
Yeah.
maybe I need a wee bit more yoga today than I do steps, right? And again, just being open, as you said, listening to your body because your body will tell you what it needs, and I think at first it's just a little whisper, and we just have to get reacquainted with that little whisper, and if we ignore it, eventually it becomes a big yell or an injury.
Yeah, it's so true. Or disease, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I love the
absolutely.
example you gave because I think, asking yourself that question, even if you're going to run every day,
Mhm.
the quality of the run changes based
Totally.
on what your body is telling you, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a lot to give today. Okay, well, we're
Mhm.
still going to run, but we're going to change the quality at which we're running, right? So it's not so aggressive or we're not going for such distance.
Yeah.
And so it's like, again, it's helping us to get out of that all or nothing thinking.
Yeah.
And where can I meet myself today based on my actual resource availability, not the
Yeah.
resource availability I wish I had.
I love that. Oh my gosh, and when you get that that energetic alignment, it like
Yeah,
the workout or the activity or the movement practice or whatever it is, even if the journaling, even it's like, "I got nothing today, I'm just gonna write down a couple words."
yeah,
Like, meeting yourself, as you said, with those small steady steps, again, consistently, I think that's, makes such a difference, and I'm so appreciative that you're putting this great work into the world. So, Courtney, thank you for publishing your book. Can you tell our listeners where we can learn all about your new book and all about the great work that you're doing?
yeah. The best place to go is graceandgrit.com is my website. The book, of course, has its own website, but it can link through that, but it's
Okay.
theconsistencycode.com. So either one of those places, Grace and Grit or the Consistency Code.
That's amazing. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes for everybody. Courtney, thank you so much for showing up today for this conversation. I am so excited to take a deeper dive into more of your work. And again, thank you for bringing such clarity to a subject that often feels very complicated.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for spending time with me on this episode of Life by Design. I appreciate if you have a moment to pay this forward, share it with someone who you think might benefit from the ideas shared in this episode. If you're feeling so inspired, please also rate and review the podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Again, thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.